We are live. It's John Pollock and Wei Ting moments after AEW Dynasty. How are you, Wei?
I'm I'm just hesitating because I know we're going to get the same complaints from people. But this show was too fucking long, and I'm not afraid of saying it for this one. It is 12:30 a.m. Oh, man. It was too long.
This was one of their later shows that they have gone. I mean, typically they flirt with midnight Eastern and are basically wrapping up by then. Yeah, it is a tough ask if you are on the East Coast for some of these shows, especially on a Sunday night. I would say, as we are coming at you a little later than I assumed we would be after this show. But it was, it was a show that was. Listen, there's a lot to discuss from this particular event. We are going to be diving into things right away.
Do I have to say it like it's the same thing every single month? Great wrestling. Okay, if I individually watch each of these matches, if I split this show in half and I watched it over 2 nights, I think I'd love it. But in one sitting, especially with the way this pay-per-view ended, I I'm kind of leaving with more dissatisfaction directly coming off of it. I feel like at the end of this review, I'll probably look back and be like, "Man, that was a really really good show." But like we're literally starting right after it ended, so that's kind of the answer to the question that you asked.
Well, it's a perfectly reasonable response to have for a. How long did we go here? 5.5 hours roughly with the 0 hour. Well, tonight they were in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at the Liacouras Center. 7,900 tickets out per WrestleTix, and the pre-show was really interesting. This was a totally different format that they did, where pretty much we had one match, because I'm not going to call the Max Caster segment really that much of a match, as more so of an angle and introduction or reintroduction. But we had a plethora of walk-ons with the panel, including Madison Rain, Harley Cameron, Briscoe, Tomohiro Ishii, he's just hanging out at the Liacouras Center just to take in the show.
I guess he was at Collision.
Figured, why not? Why not I go to the pay-per-view? So there. I wish he was on the panel for the whole 90 minutes.
Yeah, sure, that would be interesting analysis. Yeah.
Lexi Nair interviewed Ricochet, and then we go about a half hour into the 0 hour to Nick Wayne and crew. Not the crew, just crew. Lio Rush and Action Andretti against Top Flight and AR Fox. And they did make mention of Nick Wayne being among the participants announced for the Best of the Super Juniors. So he will be going off to do that in May. And I thought this was a really entertaining opening match to throw out on the kickoff. And the way this pre-show was structured, I did feel this match kind of stood out a bit more, because it was not just one of four. It was pretty much your only pre-show match. They built up for a while to the hot tag to AR Fox. The crowd was really behind. There were lots of chants for Fox. And then after he's tagged, he did a big comeback spot on Action Andretti, and then hitting a double cutter onto Rush and Nick Wayne. That got a big pop. And then he went for three consecutive Tope Con Heroes back and forth on opposite sides. Layla Gray grabbed Kip Sabian off the apron, but with the referee's back turned, Mother Wayne shoved AR Fox off the top, leading to Wayne's World, and Nick Wayne pinning AR Fox in 11 minutes and 17 seconds, setting up AR Fox versus Mother Wayne for Double or Nothing. I can't wait, now that we've introduced intergender.
That might be an all-in match. I think we might save that for that one.
That's right. I think so.
I thought it was an excellent modern cruiserweight match. Everybody in this match can work fast, and it was like, I think it was like a video game. Sometimes like simulators are great, like video games that maybe aim for like a pace of realism. But sometimes I want to play like an arcade style of video game where everything is just bonkers, and that's what I thought this style of match was. We just let the guys who could do impressive flippy shit do impressive flippy shit. And judging by the crowd, I thought maybe AR Fox might have actually made one of the bigger impressions of the six.
Really entertaining start to the show. And then we just got like 40 minutes of talking. This was, I thought I was watching a WWE pre-show, and we finally go to Max Caster's open challenge, and he scolds the audience on their inflection when they're trying to do his chant along with him. He reveals a Ben Simmons jersey in Philadelphia, insults the crowd, and the lights go out. And returning, it's the 5-tool player, Anthony Bowens. New theme, new gear, same sidekick because Billy Gunn was back. And Tony Schiavone remarks, he looks like a superhero. I was like, I hope he plays a superhero. That would be a wonderful role for Anthony Bowens. And so, yes, this is at 5TP Anthony Bowens, his first match since January, and he drills Max with a right hand, famouser, and a rolling elbow. That's it, 39 seconds, and Bowens says it's time to make history. So he is back, and Max Caster was flattened.
He was, yeah. I think it continues the trend of Tony using these 0 hour like main events, or at least like a 0 hour portion to tell a substantial story. I thought last month it was like the Gravity Jericho angle, and this time it was what seemed like the payoff to the entire Max Caster open challenge gimmick, right? Like this has to be the last one, right?
No, they're gonna ride this forever. I mean, this guy's only TV time. It's just, hey, I will lose to anybody quickly. You'll get on TV quite a bit in this company.
I guess so, but this is like, the one that should end it being, his former tag team partner. But
done wonders for Max Caster.
It's a questionable way to follow up, somebody's
if I had told
on the
you,
Acclaimed.
If I had told you 2 years ago, when they break up the Acclaimed, they're going to have their blow-off match unannounced. It's going to be a 39-second squash, and it's going to be totally forgettable.
Yeah, no, that is pretty crazy when you talk about it like that. I don't exactly know what the thinking is behind Max Caster's follow-up from the Acclaimed, but he has basically sort of diminished his role to that just of a comedy guy, who's kind of there to eat pins from really anybody, including his tag partner. But I almost feel like at this point, the more important project is Anthony Bowens, and I thought like he came across well.
This is a good reintroduction for him, and we will see if he can become like a player. It is tough, and he's not attached to this Owen tournament or anything, but it's all in follow up and having a regular presence. So we will see. And he does have Billy Gunn with him as well, so they can keep doing the scissoring deal as well. So Anthony Bowens has established that he may in fact be a 5-tool player, but we know all of you out there, when you're navigating online, you need a 5-tool strategy, and that begins and ends with NordVPN.
Support for this podcast comes from NordVPN. By now, a lot of our listeners already know about the benefits of a VPN for their wrestling consumption, helping them access cheaper prices for pay-per-views or ad-free programming through international versions of popular streaming services. But the most important benefit of a VPN continues to be its ability to help you shield your browsing. Using a trusted VPN like NordVPN adds an extra layer of protection from prying eyes, preventing your sensitive data from being sold or shared with third parties that may put you at risk of unwanted solicitations or even fraud. You know the link by now, nordvpn.com/postwrestling. Sign up for a 2-year plan for just a few dollars per month and get 4 bonus months through our exclusive offer. nordvpn.com/postwrestling. As always, you can try it with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Stay safe and enjoy all the benefits of a secure internet with Nord.
Beautiful. Couldn't have said it better myself than the great Wei Ting.
Excellent segue as always.
I try, Wei. When you have 6 hours, you can prep these things a little better. But yes, if you're enjoying this review, I do encourage everyone. Wei and I are live Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown over at postwrestlingcafe.com. The minute a wrestling show ends, no matter what hour of the night it is, we go live moments later if you are a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe. And if not, if that's too much for you, at least hit subscribe on the channel to get all of our beautiful free content that Wei is responsible for so much of it populating.
Well, me and the entire team, of course, at Post Wrestling. So yes, please do that.
We now move on to the main show, and we're starting things off with Will Ospreay and Kevin Knight for the Owen Hart Cup. An interesting note is that Kevin Knight did not end up working the MLW show last night in Los Angeles, California. They didn't give any explanation for it, but the other members of the match, he was to team with Kushida against Satoshi Kojima and Okamura. those three were all in the battle riot, but Kevin Knight was not there, and it would make sense that if AEW, he's a contracted guy to AEW, yeah, we don't want you across the country and wrestling the night before a pay-per-view in a major match for us where you're already replacing somebody else who's injured. So Kevin Knight, realistically, this is the biggest match of his career going into this pay-per-view opener with Will Ospreay, and I thought they did a terrific job. If you were to tell me Kevin Knight's gonna, like, this was the handicap, was that I don't think there was one person in this building who thought Kevin Knight was winning this match, and the objective was to lose but make you really want to see this guy's progression, and I don't think they could have hit it out of the park any better than this. Ospreay did so much to get this guy, all of his offense. They showcased all of his, like, his big drop kicks, the elevation that he can get. They really showcased this guy's athleticism, and he had a perfect guy to work off of here. Some of the highlights, including Knight doing his big leaping Rana spot. There was a sunset bomb attempt by Ospreay, but then he holds on to Knight and he teases a Styles Clash on the ramp, and Knight just pulls himself up into a DDT to Will on the ramp. As they return to the ring, another DDT is hit and Will kicks out. Knight then counters a power bomb with a Dragon Rana for a 2 count. At this point, the crowd is on its feet. They're very hot for this. Knight does his UFO splash, and then there's an Oscutter attempt, and it's stopped with Kevin Knight's big drop kick. Then another Oscutter is caught into a backslide. So it's like he's got this Oscutter figured out with all these cool counters. Ospreay finally hits the Styles Clash, and when Knight kicks out, this audience is going nuts. I mean, they really just built this up so that when Kevin Knight was going to lose, it was going to be like they totally hooked the crowd here. Oscutter is finally hit, which they made a struggle for Will to finally hit this move. And then after another kick out from the Oscutter, the Hidden Blade wins it in 13 minutes and 51 seconds, a great length. And Ospreay just bows down to Knight. They shake hands, and then Ospreay looks at the all-in sign, and in case everyone didn't know, he pointed at the sign. Please do not copy this in AEW. Please do not do the point.
Yeah, like how did people build to pay-per-views before pointing to signs? You know, how did we ever get by all these years to let people know?
You had an announcer screaming the date and the time over and over 1,000,000 times over a 60-minute television program. But yes, he points to the sign, and next round he faces either Brody King or Konosuke Takeshita. But excellent match. I thought that this was the best match up until I would say of the first half of the show, and this was among the best matches of the night.
To no real surprise. I mean, I think that's sort of the expectation anytime Will Ospreay is on pay-per-view. This match was outstanding, and I think maybe we could say one of the best pay-per-view openers I can recall in quite some time. You know, this is
really strong.
Like, for Kevin Knight, his first pay-per-view match in AEW, only 8 days after his promotional debut. Like, if there are any nerves, you wouldn't have been able to tell. He hit everything flawlessly here, and with such incredible speed and precision that is demanded of, you know, an opponent like Will Ospreay. I thought the match had some incredible spots that really made use of his outstanding vertical leaps. And again, just for, I guess, okay, sure, like anybody can have a great match with Will Ospreay, but this would, I think, even beyond that, and for him to be able to deliver this sort of match, even with a Will Ospreay, I think it says a lot about what his own capabilities are. So in 8 days, they've done such a great job of establishing him so that by the time we just see Kevin Knight on, being advertised for a match against, I don't know, a commander or something, you already know that that's a match that, is worth tuning into. But as we always say, follow-up is key to one of these like hot debuts. Like AEW has no shortage of guys who can have these great matches. What's the thing that is going to set him apart from the rest?
On to the tag title match, the Hurt Syndicate against Big Bill and Brian Keith with MVP on commentary. And Lashley and Bill start off, and Bill sends him to the floor. A lot more selling in this match than I expected with Lashley and Benjamin, which was this is like the formula here. It's kind of weird. Like Keith and Bill are in the heel learning tree group, but they're very much like presented as kind of like the baby faces in this equation. And Lashley and Benjamin, while they are kind of the demeanor of heels, they're super over as baby faces to this crowd, and it can make for like a really weird dichotomy. Eventually, Keith is beaten down for several minutes. Bill comes in with avalanche splashes onto both, and then big boots. And MVP is really putting over Big Bill. He's calling him, he's a bad man on commentary. And Lashley stopped Bill with a flatliner. And then there was the lightest looking snake eyes to Bobby Lashley. He was sent out of the ring. And here MJF appears in the front row, and AEW camera work at its finest here. MJF winds up and they cut away for the shot. I was like, how do you cut on this, like the shot of the match? They showed the replay. He blasts Big Bill with the ring, and then Keith is alone in the ring where he's double teamed with a spear from Lashley. Benjamin gets down on one knee and pins him with a hand in 10 minutes and 29 seconds as they retain, and MJF is making his case to be included with the Hurt Syndicate and to win over Lashley and Benjamin.
Yeah, the finish was as we expected, but I thought, like, the camera direction aside, I thought it was relatively well done. I thought the match overall was entertaining. The crowd really loves the Hurt Syndicate. I think they're a very strong act to lead this tag team division. They're dominant and they're serious, and they're a great tag team for everybody else to chase. Big Bill in this match, I thought, looked very good, and I felt like this attempt at making the learning tree feel a bit more serious has been effective, especially for him. He was wrestling a lot more like a babyface here, so it makes me wonder if what his and Brian Keith's future is within the learning tree, but especially a Big Bill.
Yeah, I wasn't as high on this one, just in comparison to everything else on this show. But it sort of just felt like a transition match for the Hurt Syndicate. And if Lance Archer and Brian Cage are ready to go, you have that. And of course, we also have another team that returned tonight that we will get to.
And all the MJF stuff, of course.
And MJF, you have that story to continue to take up television time coming out of this. Mercedes Moné and Julia Hart in the next Owen Hart Cup tournament match. Harley Cameron is backstage watching with her puppet. And early on, I actually like this. Moné goes to scale the ropes, and she clearly slips, and the crowd just gets on her. Dude, she didn't give a care. She just looks at this crowd like, yeah, so what? And she just danced. I loved it. I think it's like it's as much of a screw up as you allow it to be, and you can really just you can transition, you can own it, and I thought it was just like a great just handling of it, and she went right back into things.
It's telling the crowd, yeah, I messed up. So what? Congratulations.
It's the Sabu theory. No, I planned to screw that up.
Or just like, congratulations, you found a mistake. You should really be so proud of yourself. That was the type of vibe I got from her.
So, I mean, like the other Owen Hart Cup match, I don't think anyone was questioning what the outcome of this match was going to be, and that was going to be a struggle. And I think unlike the Kevin Knight match, I think this was one where it did take some time. But then there was a point in the match where all of a sudden they believed Julia Hart could win this match. And suddenly it just clicked, and all of her near submissions and near falls really meant something. And you saw it, like they were going through, like they were doing a lot of big spots here. There was a tornado DDT by Julia Hart. The Moneymaker is countered, and they kind of had to reset for this roll-up attempt. Julia Hart went for the tarantula. She could barely hold on to Mercedes here. And then as she goes for the moonsault, Moné gets her boots up, hits a pair of backstabbers, but Hart fights back with the crucifix bomb. And when she applies Heartless, this is when suddenly the crowd is like, hey, wait, that's her finisher. Maybe she's going to win this. And Moné cradles to get out into the statement maker, and the crowd boos this so heavily. As Hart tries to turn over, they're chanting Julia, and she rotates out. She gets one final Mahistral cradle attempt, and Moné manages to crucifix both of the arms and backslides her for the pin at 12 minutes and 55 seconds as they show Athena backstage watching, and we will see if that is going to be a second round match or not. But 12 minutes, 55 seconds, this one goes.
I thought it resulted in a good match. I thought they had planned a pretty intricate match, as I think Mercedes matches often tend to be. And there were definitely several blemishes in there.
Yes.
But it certainly didn't affect the crowd's reaction by the end of this. They were really into the near submissions, and they were really into Julia Hart as the underdog, especially towards the end. So I thought the match showed really, like, despite not being a focal point in the division in some time, the crowd still really has a love for Julia Hart. So whenever they do decide to, you know, make her the focal point of something, like, she is one of those people, like a Hikaru Shida, you know, or like several others in the division. The moment they want to do something with her, the crowd will immediately take to it. Mone, I thought, was overall really great, especially at playing with the crowd, and just showed great creativity in her sequences. So not a perfect match, you know, unlike several of the other great Mercedes Moné pay-per-view matches, but it didn't affect them from reaching the intended reactions by the finish line.
Yeah, I would say, like, listen, there was some very stiff competition on the show. This was certainly not in contention for one of the better matches on the show. But I think the key was, like, those final 5 minutes and the audience really getting behind Julia Hart. It really did, you know, leave this one on a positive note and overcame some of the hiccups throughout the match. So I think that was the positive from it. Rated FTR challenging Claudio Castagnoli, Pac, and Wheeler Yuta for the AEW Trios titles follows. Crowd singing along with Cope's theme as they are all in their matching gear. Always a bad signal. And then this garage door opens and we get the three villains from some upcoming sci-fi flick appearing here with the Death Riders. And the eerie red backlight as well accompanying them in the background. So the match begins. Early on, Dax is getting...
One of the keys to this is that Yuta is from Philadelphia.
Yes, and they were all over Yuta. They hated this guy. So he got the most heat of anyone in this match. Well, until the post-match. But Yuta, first, it's Dax getting upset while he's in there with Pac. Cope has to calm him down. Yuta then shoves Wheeler off the top into a European uppercut by Claudio, and they stomp down Wheeler for several minutes here and are attacking him. Then there was a three-way submission spot as Yuta tries to attack. He's caught in the grindhouse by Cope, while Claudio and Dax each apply sharpshooters in front of each other, and then they start slapping one another. So we got the three-way submission spot. And then Cope comes in, hits a superplex to Pac, followed by the Power and Glory combo by Dax and Cash. And the brutalizer gets applied on Dax. Claudio subdues Cope, and then Yuta holds on to Cash. They're teasing that submission is going to happen, but then Cash lifts up Yuta, crashing into them for the save. And it's Yuta running into the Shatter Machine, followed by a spear, and Claudio makes the last second save as they got people to bite on a potential title change. But then, after Cope goes for a spear and nearly runs into Dax, it's Yuta knocking Cope into his partner, and Yuta lands the Busaiku onto Dax, pinning him at 14 minutes and 39 seconds. I love that Yuta got the pin in this one, and that was a great finish. And afterward, Rated FTR are left in the ring. They're all frustrated. Dax is still selling the effects, and he's lifted up by Cope and Cash. They hug, and then Dax hits Cope with a pile driver, and you've never seen a crowd so happy to see a man with neck problems dropped on his head. And Dax goes to grab two chairs. Cash cannot believe what he's witnessing, and as Cash is watching, Dax sets up for the concerto, and he hands the chair to Cash, but he shoves Dax. The fans booed this because the fans want this angle. They want Dax and Cash to beat the hell out of Cope. So Cash instead lifts up his best friend Cope, the man who took him into his house when he had nothing, and hit him with the Shatter Machine together. And the crowd can't believe it and follow with a spike pile driver on the chair. And then it's Cash that takes the chair and waffles Cope with not one, but two concertos. As Cash then mocks him. The EMTs are down. He puts the neck collar on himself, and they're just making fun of Cope. They knock over the stretcher and leave. And Excalibur just can't keep it in. He calls these two assholes and asks, is this the last time that we have seen Cope in professional wrestling? I'm going to guess no, Excalibur. That would be an affirmative no. But we did get the big... I guess, yeah, we can call it a full turn here, and probably Cope. I bet you this guy can come back from this by July 12th. That's my prediction. I think so? He'll be okay to make a miraculous 3-month recovery from this destroyed neck and multiple concussive blows from these concertos. I think 3 months is all he needs.
That's your official diagnosis, Dr. Pollock?
I am. Dr. Pollock believes that he will be, maybe he'll find a born-again Christian and find religion during this this debilitating therapeutic recovery.
Before we talk about the angle, I want to talk about the match. I thought it was an awesome match. I thought Yuta actually was the standout here. He maybe they anticipated that he would probably receive the biggest reaction in Philly, and by giving him the win, I thought it was the perfect way to end this, leading to the post-match angle. Yuta seemed very comfortable in this sort of spotlight, playing with this sort of reaction from the crowd. So I thought he did very well here. I was really impressed with Rated FTR as a trios, and they showed a lot of creativity in their triple T moves, and it almost
they had to get everything out here. This is
well,
we got all our ideas have to be forced into this.
It makes me disappointed that we're never going to get one of these triple T matches again. I think even before the match, I think the storytelling has been a strong point for these three. The great build up to the match itself, the very great moments between Dax and Cope within the match itself as well to just tease that tension. But then we get into, I thought, what was an incredibly satisfying turn in this post match. I think it was, again, so well done because you understand the motivation of the characters that are involved. With Dax, I mean, it's been bubbling beneath the surface. He has been acting very well as somebody who's been trying to suppress his emotions of wanting to do this for a long time. But they've been teasing it and playing with it so well. Cash is the person that, though, is really the more of the shocking turn because of the backstory attached to Copeland taking him in and all of that. So when he did
if Cope and Will Ospreay have taught us one thing, don't take people into your house, okay? I don't care if it's a pandemic. I don't care if they're broke. These people will screw you, okay?
Tell them, just give them like the location of the nearest hostel or something, or like give them like an Airbnb recommendation. Don't let them.
We should also say the announcers were theorizing if Cash made this decision in the moment because he had shoved down Dax. Like they were trying to make sense of this. Like the shove was not like they were doing a swerve, but rather that it all clicked for Cash, that here is Cope. It goes back to their sit down where Dax was, subtly stating he's holding us back from our tag aspirations. We were behind him as he failed to win the title. And it's this idea like, he screwed up here and he's holding us back.
I'm very interested to hear the follow-up promo, especially from Cash, to hear when exactly he decided to do this in storyline. Because it could also be possible that he was faking his sincerity in the lead up to all of this so that he could just get Cope into the vulnerable position. But that doesn't necessarily explain.
Then what did we do for
match.
15 minutes here?
Well, that's not what they're.
I think this one's really simple. It's like Dax just felt like he was going to try his best in this match, but it was like, again, I'm going to blame Cope for the loss, and he snapped. And Cash, it all came together for him in the post match that he realizes this. I think that all makes sense, and it goes with the logic, and there is no like weird logic gap in this turn.
I think there's also something to be said about like, okay, here's a guy who gave his couch to you, but if your brother, your tag team partner, makes a decision, you're loyal to that guy 100%. So whatever he chooses, you have to go along with it 100% as well.
Well, I thought it was really well done, the angle to set this up, and it's so I think honestly, like I feel like this story was one of the more intriguing aspects of the show for people going in. Was what it was not. This was less so like the match and more so the angle and where the angle was going to go. And you felt like you were going to get some crescendo on this show, and they delivered it.
Yeah, it was for me one of my more anticipated matches heading into it because of the great storytelling from these three. I actually thought it would have been the other way around because I thought Cope turning would have been maybe a little bit more likely because I just think turning Christian is such a tough task. So that's the other thing I'm very interested in. How are they going to turn Christian into a babyface?
It's kind of hard to reunite when this guy pretty much did all this stuff to you as well and wanted to kill you. So but you know what?
Maybe he'll say, "I know." That'll be it.
That could be it. Well, we will see. Maybe they will come together. Timeless Tony
but
Storm.
a great turnaround for Cope for FTR, who like have kind of haven't really been in a hot angle in like quite some time. This is it. This is great.
Timeless Tony Storm and Megan Bayne for the women's championship. Penelope Ford is out with Megan Bayne, and then we have an alert towards our feature presentation, and it is Toni Storm doing her own Rocky training montage, and then entering in a boxing robe with Luther as Mickey.
I give her a lot of credit for not doing the Rocky steps. Because I think in every like Rocky parody in history, like that's just sort of like the easy thing to do.
I mean, they might not have had time. I mean, they might have just shot this morning when they got into town, or who knows? They might not have.
I guess so. Sure.
Because this was omitting the Rocky steps. So Bayne is just throwing her around, and this was like Megan Bayne was the monster here. That was just like just nonstop offense, and it was structured around Toni's selling for a good portion of this. So Bayne is in control, and we have Penelope would choke her behind the referee's back, and Bayne starts throwing her around with all of these belly to bellies until finally Penelope gets onto the apron, and Luther carries her to the back, and this leads to Storm's comeback. She applies a STS around the throat of Bayne, and then into this rotating German off of the turnbuckle that Bayne just gets over for and lands on her front. Comes down at a rough angle, and Storm fires back. Crowd is very heated here. They're both trading Germans. Bayne hits this big Michinoku driver for a 2 count, and then after a German by Storm, she hits the hip attack, and Bayne just pops up out of the corner. She's headbutted, and then 3 consecutive running hip attacks are hit by Toni, followed by the Storm Zero, and Megan Bayne kicks out at 1 as Shivani yells, "She's in there with a monster!" And the monster comes back with a Liger bomb and goes for Fate's Descent when Toni counters it with the small package, catching Megan Bayne in 15 minutes and 23 seconds. And Luther carries the victorious Toni Storm out to the back. I thought they structured this so well. I thought Megan Bayne more than lived up to the push for this match that she received, and I thought she was not harmed in the least with this at the end. It was like she withstood the biggest offense from Toni Storm's repertoire and kicked out at 1. And it was just like this slip on a banana peel that Toni Storm leaves with the title, but totally leaves this open for a rematch that you could do again. I would personally hold off on it and not just go to it next month. But I think this is one where you could definitely have these two meet again at some point. I was just really impressed with Megan Bayne in this match, with Toni Storm, and the match layout was very effective.
I love the small package finish. It's what she was using as rookie Toni Storm, of course. So it's sort of become an unofficial finisher for her. And in this situation, it worked really perfectly with the right opponent. Very strong match, and I thought a great performance from both women. In particular, Toni Storm, of course, whose creativity as a character at this point may be the most impressive in the entire company. I think, she's figured this out a long time ago, but I think it deserves to be commended that she's really found the right balance between character and wrestling. Remember like maybe one of the first few matches she had as the Timeless Toni Storm character, I thought maybe, that was a little bit shaky, but she figured out a long time ago how much of the character to do and how much of the wrestling to do. And as a babyface, you're obviously getting a lot more of that wrestling right now. But the character is still coming through in the facial expressions, the posing, certainly in the entrances and certainly in the post-match reactions as well. I thought, like you, John, that kick out at 1 spot, like at this point, is almost a little bit cliche and almost just like overused, for that one reaction. In this situation, I felt it was used for a longer lasting purpose where Megan Bayne can say, I took all your offense and I still kicked out at 1, which is, more than enough of a moral victory before their next match. I also thought Penelope Ford and Luther were used pretty effectively, in their roles, and I'm happy to see the both of them get some significant airtime.
Yeah, so I think you have 2 options here. You could just jettison someone in for Double or Nothing with Toni, or you could run this back because you're kind of in this holding period because you have the Women's Owen Hart Cup going on.
How do you book that finish?
I mean, you could go
Like,
to
does Bayne lose again?
well, if you do some kind of stipulation, it has to be like if you want
Because
Tony,
who's going to All In as champion?
I think you have Tony Storm going, so
Yeah.
that's what you're looking at. But your next pay per view is a month and a half away, so you could introduce somebody else. It's tough though. You're trying to create a title contender while you're doing this big tournament for a title opportunity. So it's
yeah.
like it's your same.
I don't
It's like
think-
your in between pay per view that WWE has to contend with every year.
Sure. I don't think she has to defend at every pay-per-view. That's just my opinion. Like, she could be involved in a tag match if there's like enough storyline significance or something.
You want a 2-hour in your house format from 1995.
No, I'm not. I don't necessarily want that. I even think like 3 hours, 3.5 hour might even be a sweet spot for an AEW show. But like, I also don't think every champion has to defend just because it's a pay-per-view.
Well, Kyle Fletcher and Mark Briscoe followed them in the Owen Hart Cup. Don Callis is out on commentary, and Briscoe introduces a chair, which Rick Knox gets rid of. So Briscoe informs the crowd to boo this man. And then he just throws in a bunch of chairs in. And these two, they had just like a super physical match here. Fletcher suplexes him on the chair. And then they show Takeshita backstage watching this. And my first thought was, wow, this guy flew from Tokyo to Philadelphia, where he was on Sakura Genesis yesterday, and he arrived in Philadelphia to be told, this is what we've got scheduled for you. You're going to be there for a 5-second cutaway. And then I started thinking, he's scouting Kyle Fletcher versus Mark Briscoe when he's got his first round match with Brody King, and the winner is facing Will Ospreay. So this is like, this is going to be
For
a
the
long
potential final. Yeah.
This could be a potential final, yes. So it was very imperative we get Konosuke Takeshita on this show.
Well, does he not live in the U.S. at this point?
He does. I'm just stating that this was a.
So he probably was around anyway.
I guess. That's a long travel day. That's all I'm saying.
You would have expected that he would have taken an extra day in Japan to take his time.
I'm just stating that to get to, if this was live, it's just like, why am I going to Philadelphia for this?
Well, the answer is always for the great catering.
Well, I hope it was a hell of a catered event in Philadelphia for Takeshita as he was in between scouting. So we get a pair of apron bombs by Kyle Fletcher and then he drops him onto the desk, onto the barricade with another power bomb, and they just up the ante here. We see a proto buster onto the edge of the apron where I thought Mark Briscoe died here being hit because he got tied up in the ropes. And then another brain buster inside of the ring. That's only a near fall. Then there's a BT bomb off the turnbuckle, a sliding lariat and froggy bow by Mark Briscoe. He hits the cutthroat driver and the crowd is getting into this quite a bit. Fletcher rolls out of the ring and he gets hit by another froggy bow. Fletcher gets his feet up in the ring, pair of running kicks, and then it's the top rope turnbuckle brain buster, which keeps Mark Briscoe down in 16 minutes and 11 seconds. So the winner of this, which is obviously Kyle Fletcher, will face either Hangman or the wild card. Excellent match. I thought this one was one that you could state on paper, this looks good, but it's coming in kind of just in the middle of this show, and this could have been cold. I just thought this was an incredible match that these two had.
Yeah, it was really, really excellent, and it's very much like the Ospreay match in that I think the outcome was very predictable, especially since Briscoe beat Fletcher in the C2. But by the end, even though like the outcome was kind of like assumed, and I wouldn't necessarily say this was like a hot match going in, you're still really grateful that this match existed and that you got to watch it because it was outstanding. Fletcher really just continues to show how impressive he is as a complete wrestler. He's got speed, he's got precision, he's got power, and he's got charisma now attached as well. So can't say good things enough about him. Mark Briscoe, no matter how he's booked, he feels like one of the most natural baby faces that the company has on its roster. Great fire in his comebacks, takes a ton of damage, like has a real Mick Foley quality about him in that sense. So just a great match, great crowd reactions, and lifts up the standard of this pay-per-view to a high level.
Chris Jericho against Bandido, title versus mask for the ROH title. And we got Bandido's mother and sister in the front row, back for another appearance. And Jericho starts the match by immediately hitting a code breaker and then a lion salt, which Bandido kicks out of both. He comes back with a series of dives and goes over to give his mother a hug. And then he does the vertical suplex spot where he holds up Jericho, tries his best to hold him upwards, but he's above. And we get a count all the way to 60 as Bandido was just struggling at the end here and finally let him down. And Jericho's equilibrium was off as he just collapsed.
Bandido may have done this spot before, but I hadn't seen it. I've never seen a... Okay, so this is not officially 1 minute. It was a count to 60, okay? But still, I've never seen a vertical suplex to the count of 60. I think that's amazing for both men involved in this spot.
Well, Jericho is selling the effects of this and catches Bandido on the apron and power bombs him to the floor. And Jericho starts yelling at the family, and Jericho goes for a top rope Rana. It's blocked. And then the power bomb attempt by Bandido gets countered, and Jericho hits the Rana onto Bandido, which looked really impressive. And then Bandido, when he recovers, tries for a tornillo off the top, which Jericho was to hit with a code breaker. And they tried their best here. Very, very hard to time this, but nonetheless, it was knees to the body of Bandido. We teased the Mexican standoff, but Jericho sucker punches him. And then Jericho prevents the 21-plex by holding on to the ropes, gets the walls applied, and then after reaching the rope, he shoves Bryce. Bryan Keith is limping down to the ring, still selling the spear, and he is stopped by gravity as Jericho gets the bat, nails Bandido, and rolls on top and covers Bandido. And the crowd cannot believe this. I so wanted just a cutaway to his mother, like, crying, but we didn't get that. But the family...
Jericho, just before we get to the rest, Jericho may have, like, chipped a tooth or something.
That's what they were saying. Well. Yeah, he had, like, he looked like he had blood from his mouth, and they were suggesting, yeah, he may have chipped a tooth somewhere in this. Mm-hmm. But the family starts protesting to Aubrey Edwards, and they go over and they find the hidden bat. And Bryce Remsburg restarts the match. And Jericho grabs at the sister from the ring, is slapped by the sister, and Bandido hits the X knee and the 21-plex, pinning him for the big pop. His family surrounds him, and Bandido is your ROH champion, and he is a masked man still.
Yeah. The Dusty finish with the instant replay, or at least like the Aubrey finish, I don't know how much the crowd was behind that, to be honest. I thought the reaction for the match restarting, I don't know if it was as big as the finish that they did before with Jericho pinning him, because I don't know, that's just my perception. Like, we've always heard
it was a pretty big pop when he won the title. I thought
it was I felt like there might have been a bit of disappointment that we actually didn't get to see the unmasking.
Well, for Bandido's sake, I was glad he was not being unmasked here. I think that would have been very detrimental for Bandido. But yes, he is your ROH champion, and it does make
the match. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add, like, I do wonder what this, like, if you look in deeper at this, like, the whole purpose of Jericho winning this title was getting ROH on this higher profile, and it's at a time they're still looking for larger distribution. Is this sort of like an acknowledgement that ROH is probably staying put on Honor Club, and Jericho is done with ROH at this point?
We don't know. We don't know what the status is of those deals. Yeah, I don't know enough to be able to say.
How about the match?
I thought the match overall was actually quite strong. I actually have a lot of respect for Jericho wrestling this style of match at his age. His drive to, like, challenge himself this way, I think, is honestly quite impressive. Especially when at a time when I think he could really just kind of coast for his career. He chooses to have these sort of matches. Like, this was a Bandido match, and doing spots like that, vertical suplex for 66, a count of 60, and just like the type of athleticism that I think was required for this. I thought his crowd work was very good, and he took quite a bit of real damage, it seems, especially if that chipped tooth was an actual thing. And it all, to me, was in service of a great highlight moment for Bandido.
Yeah, and again, like, hopefully it is Like I don't want to see Bandido relegated on ROH, but that might be the case that you have here, if as long as
What
he is.
room is there for him on Dynamite? You know,
Well,
we don't want to see anybody relegated to a spot that might not be the best, right? But what other places are there for
yeah,
Bandido?
I mean, listen, we can go up and down this roster. You can't make roles for everybody on this roster, and they do have ROH, which is a forum, it is an outlet for these people, but yeah, that's just the numbers game that they're going to be playing with. Daniel Garcia, Adam Cole. Wait, what did you think at this time when this was the no time limit match? Were you saying, "Oh boy, we might not be starting at midnight"?
Yeah, well,
this match was a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be. I thought easily this one has to go like 30 minutes after establishing like they couldn't get a finish in 20 minutes, and but we got a shorter match between them.
Yeah. I mean, maybe forget my own reaction, but like I kind of felt the crowd might have felt like they were not ready for this to go no time limit.
Yeah. So let's go through the match first, because yes, I have conflicting thoughts on this. The Panama Sunrise is attempted very early by Adam Cole off the apron to the floor, and when he misses, he comes down on the ankle, and there are two guarantees in AEW. It is for the rest of their careers, Kenny Omega is selling diverticulitis, and Adam Cole's got a bad ankle, and that is going to be the story of many of these men's matches.
And Adam Copeland will sell his neck. You know what else?
Well, those are the key ones. So Garcia has no mercy on this guy. He immediately targets the ankle. He's stomping it, and it becomes his full focus. Now, you could see that Cole, he manages an Ushigoroshi, and then Cole stops a Dragon Tamer. Gotch pile driver is hit by Daniel Garcia for a 2 count, and they start trading blows, and Garcia applies the ankle lock. Cole makes it to the rope, and then he whips Cole into the steps, clutching his ankle, and Garcia does Cole's pose, and he tries a pile driver on the steps, but Cole blocks it, lifts him up, and drills him with a knee. And the announcers are trying to explain, it's like, oh my God, what did he do on the steps? And it's like, he did nothing to him on the steps. It was like he was standing above the ground as he hit pretty much like an Ushigoroshi. He like drilled him with a knee.
The sushi goroshi, as Braden calls it.
And they showed the replay. I'm like, there was no contact on the steps by this guy. It was like, this was just like an elevated strike that he hit. But that was that. Then Cole hits the Panama Sunrise off the steps to the floor. My only issue with this selling was this man had a miraculous recovery for these Panama Sunrises later in the match with this debilitated ankle. But he hits the Panama Sunrise. Then in the ring, Garcia collapses before he can hit the boom. So Cole allows he collapses, and Garcia manages the Panama Sunrise during his comeback, and Garcia hits the boom, leading to a near fall, and then he starts smashing the ankle into the mat out of frustration, and Garcia tries a pile driver off of the turnbuckle, which was going back to the MJF angle of how he took him out. But Cole holds on, headbutts Garcia, hits a Panama Sunrise, hits a second Panama Sunrise, and then a boom, and he pins Daniel Garcia totally clean in 15 minutes and 35 seconds to win the TNT Championship. I thought just from start to finish, I really, really liked this match. It was a totally different style than, and this is part of it though. It was a totally different style of match than pretty much anything on this card. But to that end as well, like the audience was pretty checked out of this. And I think like, this was just like a storytelling match based on this bad ankle, and Daniel Garcia kind of selling like he's not going to have any mercy on this guy. And I think you could appreciate that. But it was like this audience, they have sat through a lot of intense stuff. And there was a lot of like, they've still got this crazy 3-way and a very violent main event to come, that sometimes when you take down the tempo a bit, like the audience kind of took this as sort of a match to just, they were like, the heat was just not there, but I found it to be a really entertaining match.
I agree with that. You know, I thought the use of the angle injury was well done to facilitate Garcia's sort of turn in intensity and his mean streak in the match. But the crowd was clearly getting tired at this point, and they were not as reactive to it as I think if this was maybe placed elsewhere in the card. But, that says a lot about, I would say, their interest in the match itself, which going in, this was a program that was largely taking place on Collision. It's a show that's watched by less people. This deep into the show, like we're talking 3 hours into the show at this point, I think the crowd was ready to get to the reasons why they were here, that being Kenny Omega, that being the main event. So even though I thought like it was well worked, I didn't think it had enough juice to live up to, I think, people's expectations by this point in the show. Cole winning the TNT Championship, like, it doesn't feel that big to me right now, but maybe he just needs the right partner. There's just something about Adam Cole as a babyface that, for me, it's not working right now. Like maybe with Max, there was a period where it was working, but right now I just kind of really want to see Undisputed as a heel faction again.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is sort of like a reclamation project for Adam Cole, or a reclamation kind of year for Adam Cole, that I think I think his momentum was at its lowest by the end of last year, and coming off of all the MJF stuff. And I think he's with the familiar group, but I don't think it is like it is not a main event act that he is.
It's actually dragged down Kyle and even, well, Strong wasn't really maybe doing a whole lot, but like Kyle's at least was, yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe they're all kind of like in the same position.
Kenny Omega, Ricochet, and Speedball Mike Bailey for the International Championship. First of all, I thought Ricochet was so entertaining in this match. Like he was fantastic. Listen, everyone was fantastic in this match.
But you need a strong heel for a match like this.
You did, and he added so much. And I mean, they're at a point now where even when he does like his impressive athleticism, like that's to me is that when you have a guy that like can do all this cool offense and you turn him, it's such a difficult balancing act, because these are crowd pleasing maneuvers that go right against the reaction you want. And you had Ricochet doing like Fosbury's in here, and the crowd's like booing his athleticism because he's just so cocky about it. And he just played with this crowd throughout it. I just thought he was very, very entertaining throughout this whole thing. So I'm going to do my best here, Way, to go through this. But Ricochet at the beginning, he just bails out to the floor and lets Omega and Speedball go at it. And all I can say is that the greatest long-term investment for Ricochet, Trevor Mann, was shaving his head, because it is instant heat. I don't know why these crowds are so fascinated with bald, but man, does it add quite a lot. We got bald forever. And then Omega and Speedball throughout the match, they would like chop him, then slap him on top of the head. So they're playing into it as well. So they just had so much incredible sequences here. Basically, these three had to sit down, and people are expecting the greatest three-way of all time, or at least something that's in the conversation. Unbelievable pressure that you have. And again, we're about 4 hours into this show, if you include the kickoff at this point. So we're very late into the show. They do these double tandem offense maneuvers that included Bailey with a double crucifix onto both. Then Kenny did a double backslide onto both. And we get into head kicks. All three go down. And about like 6-7 minutes, the crowd is already like applauding and getting to their feet, just watching all of this. Then we went through the dive sequences, which included Kenny with the Terminator dive onto both, Ricochet with the Fosbury that got all these boos, and then Bailey leapfrogging Ricochet into the top rope Asai moonsault. And it's just everyone topping each other and coming up with like unique ways to take out both men at the same time that we would constantly see increased here. Then we continue here. Bailey returns. He ends up trying the moonsault double knees onto the edge of the apron on Ricochet, but Ricochet gets out of the way, and Bailey lands knees first onto the edge, and this would be his big handicap throughout the rest of the match that he screwed up his knee, but he's got to keep going. And that would be, I thought Speedball had like, he was tremendous at selling. He's just screaming in agony throughout the rest of this match. And he's trying to, like, here's this guy with like this Taekwondo base that he is really, really compromised with. And it worked really effectively for the closing stretch here. So he's out for a period of time while Omega and Ricochet are still in. And then he returns as Ricochet and Omega are on the turnbuckle and lands a poison Rana to Ricochet. Then Omega drops Bayley and hits a Snapdragon. And then he manages to take both Ricochet and Bayley and hit what I will call the double dragon as he hits Snapdragons to both at the same time. Bayley was the one in the middle of this, and it looked like his head got crushed coming down here. This was quite the ambitious spot for them. Then he goes into V-triggers, teases the one-winged angel, and grabs onto Ricochet. And instead of going for the one-winged angel, he turns it into Kreutz Wrath for a 2 count. Bayley is back. He's trying to get covers. Everyone is just going for these flurry of covers. And then after a Ultima Weapon misses, he re-injures the knee. So Omega goes back to his jiu-jitsu roots and applies a knee bar onto Mike Bayley. Ricochet breaks this up with a springboard 450. That generates a big near fall. And he goes for the vertigo onto Bayley for a 2 count. Omega yanks Ricochet out of the ring and is hit with this beautiful spinning wheel kick by Bayley. As Ricochet then shoves Bayley off the buckle and he lands on top of Kenny. His knee like contorts, landing on Omega. So he's all messed up from the knee. And then he battles back up to his feet and does what any man with one leg can do when they're faced with the prospect of a championship or decapitation. He goes for the crane kick and lands it on Ricochet. Ralph Macchio himself in the spirit of Speedball Mike Bayley.
Amazing.
And
a beautiful kick. Too.
Oh my God,
Ricochet
it looks so good.
Crazy kick, yeah.
So he's hit with the crane kick. And then there's an Ultima Weapon on Ricochet, but Omega breaks it up with the V-trigger. There's a spirit gun from the top turnbuckle that is stopped by Omega as he has placed Bayley seated on the turnbuckle, hits an avalanche one-winged angel to Ricochet, and Bayley is caught in a tree of woe as he's reaching and just trying to break up the cover as Omega pins Ricochet in 30 minutes and 55 seconds. And if these two set out to produce the best three-way match of all time, I'm willing to have that conversation after this match. It was amazing. Yeah. Match of the year contender. Full 5.
And maybe that might have been the recap of the year, John. Maybe one of the best recaps of all time.
Well, you give me your thoughts because I need a break.
It was an incredible match. Expectations were certainly high for this one, and I think they exceeded them. You know, to some, this might be their favorite 3-way of all time. That's the caliber, I think, of expectation that we are looking for now. Every time we see a Kenny Omega on a pay-per-view, especially when he's on there with talent that is top shelf in this sort of department, like a Mike Bayley and like a Ricochet. Very innovative spots throughout every moment of the match. I thought Bayley gained a lot here.
Tons. He looked amazing. Like he looked if you were unfamiliar with Speedball Mike Bayley, like he came in here, he's right on this level with these guys and your Ospreays. Like if you're just watching this guy this is your introduction to him.
Yeah, what I loved was that it wasn't just a great display of whether or not he could hang move for move with these two guys that I think are already well established in that department. Much of the match centered around his selling of his knee, and I thought he actually did a great job of it. So very impressed by him here, and he certainly shows that he belongs in the top mix of really any wrestling promotion. Now, it's interesting, and thank you for bringing this up, Simon. Like, as crazy as all the things he did in this match, the thing that I will remember the most out of this entire thing is that ridiculous looking crane kick, which probably received one of the bigger reactions in this match. And because, I mean, it made sense. The man had no leg, okay? So he had to lift his knee up, and what do you do with your knee lifted up? You deliver the best crane kick ever, and Ricochet took it like a champ. So that
let's give some credit to the way Ricochet took this because he sold it incredibly well.
Ricochet, I thought, was the glue for this entire match as the heel, and he did really well. He continues to show just like a great level of comfort for this role, great comfort with his ability to command an audience's reactions, and this character continues to just be like so well developed. It's made his wrestling matter that much more. So great match of the night for most, I'm sure. Likely a 5-star plus match from Dave. Probably on some people's end of the year match of the year list.
A double XL.
Yeah,
this late at night, it's going to keep you up. And then, as Omega has survived this 31-minute war, the Rainmaker makes his entrance, and this crowd went nuts here. Okada comes out, and he's got his championship. Omega has his, and they just look at each other eye to eye, and Omega's not having any of this as he just walks out and walks to the back. So interesting that, like, of course they did do this at World's End, and I think this is just simply keeping this, like, this is the destination where we're going to. And I think everyone looks at it as July 12th, and yeah, like you're starting to plant that seed. But the way I took this is that it's going to, like, I think you need some kind of some barrier in the way before you get this match, because you've got 3 months here.
Yeah. They need to build tension somehow, but they don't really have to do much. It's
how many face to faces can they do with each other week after week?
How many weeks until July? Whatever. So the question I have in my head right now is, will that match be as good as the one we saw tonight?
Well, listen, if we want to talk about the pressure, these two have, unfortunately, their own histories that they have to compete with. Mm-hmm. And with the amount of time since they have had their last singles match, whatever you want to think about their last singles match, it's only growing that much more in the legend of this series that they have to live up to and or exceed when they do this match. So it's like, it's an unbelievable level that they have to hit to be able to replicate what is held in such high esteem by everybody. So but that's part of, like, that's what the game is. But
much of those matches from that original quadrilogy had those same level of expectations.
Yeah.
And they managed to at least meet them, or in many cases they actually exceed them. Can they continue to do that several years later? It's fascinating, and certainly has people's interest enough as it is.
And most importantly, is it a match that will significantly, like, move tickets for people to want to see this match? Mm-hmm. Like, their first match since 2018, and, like, honestly, like, they need to be showing that footage and telling that story beyond just, well, it's Okada and Omega. Like, they have to make this is the rivalry of this generation, and we never thought we would get this match again, and it's happening on this date, and market that as a huge part of All In. For, like, you can use that footage, and this is when you really need to like, have your sit downs with them, like the impact of that match, how it changed their careers, how it
they should be interviewing, like, audience members, other talents, to talk about the legend of this match, the way we talk about, like, a Hell in a Cell, Mick Foley, Undertaker, for instance.
Yes, look at young Kenneth here. And then we go to the main event. It is Jon Moxley and Swerve Strickland for the AEW Championship. And Swerve's music plays, and out comes Virgil Hawkins.
Is that the alter ego of one Static Shock?
That would be it. Yes.
Wow. You knew that off the top of your head, I bet.
Easily, way. I watched every episode of Static Shock.
I'm much more of a Marvel fan than DC fan, but cool to see Swerve, give a shout out to a lesser known character.
So he's out with Nana, and then Moxley makes his way in. And you know what? I don't think Jon Moxley is going to be doing Bloodsport this year, so he brought Bloodsport to Dynasty for our opening sequences here, where we had a mount by Jon Moxley, which Taz accurately noted is a pin in our sport. That should be his finisher, the mount.
I mean, it depends if the shoulders are down. You can mount somebody without their...
Well, Swerve did get his shoulder up here, and then he was the aggressor. Shafir is getting involved early on, and then Jon Moxley just starts drilling Swerve above the eye with his elbow and is clearly looking to just bust him open here, and then starts headbutting it.
Are we talking like, was this hard way? Like, or was this an attempt at hard way? Because
so
like,
I do not know if it did not look like he opened him up with all of this, because it wasn't until he came up from the desk that he had blood. And then by the end of the match, it was like this cut had like healed itself. So he went from Static Shock to Wolverine over 20 minutes because, like, dude, there was no blood, and it was like this man had like recovered already in this 25-minute match. But
the announcers were
I
pointing
do
out
feel like he was trying to open him up hard way. That certainly looked to be the intent.
Me too. And the announcers were pointing out a hematoma. I didn't get a close enough look to be able to say whether or not. But like, if he was just using a blade, you wouldn't really have that.
Well, he was nailing him with these elbows, so it may have been a delayed swelling. I could absolutely believe that, because it looked like he was going very much for your Brock Randy Orton, maybe like a lesser violent version of that.
Again, so yeah, and maybe by morning we'll like have a lot more clarity of it. But if it was an attempt at hard way, I guess I have to ask why.
It makes
like
no sense.
Why in AEW, when like anybody, especially in a John Moxley match, can just take like like we've seen Swerve deliver incredible blade jobs. So like why would this have been different tonight?
It's going for that kind of reaction. Like it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah,
okay. But neither does getting dropped onto a board of nails either. So you have to shock people. Like that's obviously the thought process. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that blood's fake, or that blood wasn't drawn real. This one was actually drawn from a punch. Oh my god. Yeah, that's the reaction.
I guess so.
Okay.
Well, as Swerve gets thrown over the desk, and Excalibur just yells, "Oh shit!" And Swerve is then cut open as he comes up, and Mox is biting at the wound. He's at one point pretty much fish hooking this wound. It was absolutely grotesque. And then goes for we get an inverted triangle, a Kimura from Moxley, then to a triangle when Swerve finally slams free. So Moxley then goes to the Bulldog choke, and Swerve kicks him off and finally manages a rolling flatliner before hitting 3 house calls, and Shafir gets in with the briefcase. Nana steps up to Shafir and gets in her face, and then Shafir delivers like a briefcase shot that, I mean, Nana was basically in a coma from this briefcase shot, and it was kind of comical. One thing that was not really followed up on, and I was waiting for it, especially towards the end, is that whatever like the argument between Swerve and Nana that we got on Dynamite, it did not play itself into this match or anything like that.
Maybe we're just supposed to take that as like, Nana has been critical of Swerve for not keeping his focus on, I guess, priority, or maybe it was just Nana warning Swerve to not get involved so close to the title match, something like that.
And Hangman being involved in the end there, potentially. So Shafir takes out Nana, and we get a paradigm shift by Swerve onto Moxley for a near fall. Oh, sorry, this is after Swerve sidesteps and Moxley accidentally hits a cutter to Marina Shafir.
Hate it when that happens.
It's tough. You know what? Everything's happening at such a quick pace. You sometimes just so Moxley has taken out multiple women this week.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Swerve gets shoved off the top to the floor, and Moxley pulls out a ladder, and they both go up the ladder. They're fighting by the desk. Swerve bites him, and Swerve stomps Moxley off the ladder through the Spanish desk. So they're both down. Shafir hands Moxley a chair when they're back in the ring, and Swerve ducks as Moxley whips this chair right into Paul Turner. As he goes down, he's dead. There's a vertebreaker by Swerve, and then Hangman Page arrives. And both men are staggering to their feet, and Hangman's looking at one. Then he looks to the other, but before he can go for the buckshot, Pac stops him, and the Death Riders are out. They put a beating on Hangman, including Page putting Claudio in front of a Busaiku by Yuta. So Yuta nails Claudio and clears them out, hits the Deadeye on Moxley. So Hangman has given Swerve pretty much the opening to win the championship, and it represents he has at least forgiven Swerve to the point that he will allow him to be champion, and he's even going to hand him over to Swerve to win.
They want you to they want you to think of it maybe as a little bit more ambiguous because he was provoked by Moxley leading to the attack, right? But yes, we are supposed to, I think, make that assumption.
But he didn't attack Swerve. Like he could have left him laying too, and he left him fine. So they're taken out, and then with the Death Riders going after Hangman, the Ops, who just wanted to come and watch the show, made their way down and took the Death Riders out. So it looks like we have challenges for these trios belts as Swerve whips the chair at Moxley, hits the Swerve stomp, but he's at the other side of the ring and he's crawling towards Moxley when the lights go out. Tony Schiavone, God bless this man, sells this. He apologizes to the fans as though we've had like an electrical malfunction in the arena. We're sorry, fans. We're going to get someone on this. The lights turn on and the Young Bucks are holding Swerve by the wrist and proceed to hit him with the BTE trigger. Moxley climbs on top of Swerve, and Paul Turner, concussed as he is, counts 3 at 31 minutes and 28 seconds. And Tony Schiavone says, it has been 6 months since we saw the Young Bucks, as Schiavone gets in his final dig at New Japan Pro Wrestling.
I mean,
it doesn't exist in Tony Schiavone's world. Yes.
He hasn't seen the Young Bucks.
Tony only reads about New Japan commentary on Twitter. Right. Swerve loses, Moxley retains, and the Young Bucks are back as heels, helping out the guys that ran them out of the company.
Was that the actual reason for their exit, though? Like, they lost and then they left, but they were actually like, they were never really against the Death Riders.
I mean, they literally got into their truck and like drove off, evading the Death Riders after shredding up all their documents and such. So I'm sure there will be a deep explanation of all of this at the end.
Okay, so this will, I think, be the most controversial match coming out of the pay-per-view, as I feel like the Moxley matches often tend to be at this point. I'll say for me, it was hard for me to get into the match by this point in the pay-per-view. We were like past midnight. I wasn't really tired, but I found it a challenge to be invested in the match. I thought the sort of insistence on what appeared to be hardware juice was very odd, and if it was an attempt to like make you feel gross with Moxley picking at what was like an open wound, I thought it achieved that, but man, I wasn't really I didn't have the patience for it, honestly. Like, I was like, man, why do I need to watch this right now, after midnight? I thought the action in the middle, after everything we had seen already tonight, it wasn't bad, but I didn't think it was good enough to get me invested. There were, these last 2 matches. The Kenny match, did you time it?
The Kenny match?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 30-55, and this was 31-28.
We saw 2 30-plus minute matches at the end of this pay-per-view, and there was one that felt like it was a 30-minute match on this pay-per-view. The other, I think, very much justified its time. This one did not. This one, to me, just kind of felt like it was gratuitous, and it dragged. And then this finish, I might be the first to defend these sort of like finishes if it's in service of a greater story. And clearly we're getting to the Bucks versus Hangman and Swerve, okay, as a tag team. That makes fine. But man, for a pay-per-view, after this length of time and after this long of a match that wasn't that satisfying to me to begin with, it felt like such a cheap way to get to a tag team match.
Yeah, I can agree with you on the length of it. I think they're in a tough spot because you're following everything on this show, and I think that the way they thought is...
And whose fault is that?
I mean, this is your championship program, so it's going on last.
Whose fault is it that the show is this long, that by the time we get to the main event, it'll have been 4 hours deep?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a complaint to some, and listen, there were a lot of people. You can't say like this crowd was not into this match. Like, they were really into Swerve and the idea of a title change. Like, I think they bought into the fact that Swerve could win this. It was... I didn't find this to be like I'm not a big fan of any hard way spots involving like the head. I just think that like makes no sense in this day and age, but it's going to happen. So you kind of just have to accept it in these scenarios and such. I wasn't as down on this as you were. I thought this was like a better House of Torture match, but it's still a House of Torture match. That's what you're getting.
Why are you doing House of Torture matches in your main event? I understand that's sort of like the Death Riders MO, but like at a time when, you know, Toni has kind of like earned a bit of a reputation as somebody who is very much online and is very much aware of audience perceptions. We are past, like, I feel like we're like half a year now into this kind of continued constant complaint of these Death Riders matches being very unsatisfying, particularly because of the way they're booked. Why are we still ending their pay-per-views this way?
I believe that, number one, if you go based on like the estimates, and again, we don't have these concrete, is like Revolution last month did a very like a good pay-per-view number for AEW of what they have been doing. And as polarizing as it is, you do have to credit like Moxley and Cope to a degree for that number. And I think if this pay-per-view does well, you also have to credit it with Moxley and Swerve on top. Like it is an ensemble that you are selling here on pay-per-view, but it's like that's the number that AEW is going to be going by for its, like, this was brought up on the call this week about the Death Riders and the negativity towards the Death Riders angle, and that's going to be the argument. Now, I can also counter that with your attendance is nothing to be all that thrilled about week to week, and that's been the case throughout this whole Death Riders angle. And
I think it's the undercard that's responsible, not so much the main event.
Well, it's very hard to discern, but it's, you know, it's what is the biggest promoted aspect of the show. It's typically going to be
what is the most complained about aspect of the show for most pay-per-views.
But these people are buying these shows. These people are watching
because of
these
the great
shows.
undercard.
Well, it's like that's how you're gonna have to discern these.
Again, I don't even dislike the Death Riders. I like the fact that like there's a very dominant threat in Moxley as a champion. But why do the matches have to be booked like this?
I think that's just become like where they feel they've got to go with these. I'm with you. Like I don't think every match, like these matches don't have to be 30 plus minutes. And like, are you disappointed just with the match quality? Did you think like this was a time to take the title off of Moxley? Because those are two different things.
No, I don't. I would have been satisfied if Moxley beat Swerve in a different, more creative fashion that didn't just feel like such a cop out.
Yeah, I get that. Like the Bucks coming back, like you really need to explain this one, because the Bucks just coming back and they have no interaction with the Death Riders, or we're not going to really address why they left and that they were like cowering to the, like that was when the Death Riders had just pretty much wreaked havoc and then they took off, which you can explain, but I will be much more disappointed if they just kind of go off and they're feuding with Swerve and there's no there's nothing to this beyond just, hey, here's a clever way for us to book our way out of this match and to have Swerve lose with a feud to go to.
Page and Swerve need opponents, and that's why I guess the Bucks are there. You know, I'm sure they'll come up with a satisfying explanation, really, to get us anywhere.
I'm sure that is the match you're building to.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder about, like, I just feel like Swerve and Hangman is like this feud that I just feel it's one that, like, it's got to be something really great to put these two together. And I get there's a novelty, but to me, it's like these two are these like generational rivals, and like we will see. We'll see.
And when you're to finish the rivalry, when there's nowhere more to go with the rivalry, you pair them together.
Well, that's where I disagree. I don't think this rivalry should be done. I think it should be one that
you pair them together so that they can have eventually another disagreement so that we can rebuild the rivalry.
What are we going to do to top what we did? Home invasions and burnt houses and arson?
So you're just saying that you don't think this rivalry should end, right?
I'm not crazy about the idea of these guys coming together as a team.
Okay. So you think they should just continue to just torment each other like forever?
I like the idea of holding this one out, because I think there's going to be a time that one of these two is going to be your world champion, and I think that is.
I think you could still get there. like again, we're getting off topic at this point, but I just think that this is a natural progression of their story. They're both baby faces currently. They've evolved in their relationship to be able to understand why each has done what they've done. I think a tag team feels like a natural progression.
Listen, if it's done well, I won't have any complaints about it. And that's clearly where they are likely building this towards with them. So there you go. That was the show. Listen, I'm going to say I really thought this was a phenomenal pay-per-view overall. Length aside, I thought that it was very, very strong with one of the best matches of the year. And honestly, like the weak parts of this show were pretty minimal. I would say like the tag title match, I thought was the weakest match on the show. But like everything else on the show, like Mone and Julia Hart, like if that was your, like, again, like I thought like there was a
Good
lot
match.
of, like it turned out well in the end. And I thought like Julia Hart got really over in this match as well. It wasn't one of Mercedes like classics, but it was hardly like this negative either on this show. So yeah, those were my overall thoughts.
I thought every match was strong, and I apologize if I'm too hard on the main event, but I also don't apologize because I grade that one with the totality.
You probably are reflecting more people's opinions than mine is.
I have to grade the matches not just in a vacuum, but as a total, part of a whole viewing. And by the time I get 4.5 hours deep into a show, I'm expecting something that much greater to hold my attention, and that this main event did not do that, especially with the finish that they gave us.
Yeah, I'll just say like it didn't go quite till 1 a.m., but typically like UFC pay-per-views go till around 1 a.m. or so. And every single time there are complaints of people on like the East Coast and stuff. And that's on a Saturday night. You're talking about a Sunday night for people like that. That is a big ask of people that are staying up till near 1 a.m. on a Sunday night watching pro wrestling. And like, that's like, how many sporting events are you staying up till that hour to be watching on a regular basis?
Well, none. I don't really watch sports.
Okay, well, there you go.
F1 though, I guess it is sort of all over.
Wonderful
the place.
time
You can't
slots.
really count.
Yes, I mean they just start at 1 a.m. We should get on their case when they're in Japan. All right, we're gonna do a bit of feedback and then we're gonna get out of here because, as Way mentioned, it's late. So we start off with Ross, who writes, I'll keep my main event focused feedback here. I don't understand how they can feel this Mox title reign is working well enough to continue delivering these overbooked, underwhelming main event finishes for $50 a pop. Tonight was the time to crown Swerve. I'm going to disagree at this point just because of the fact that they obviously have this mapped out with the Death Riders, and to just like pull the shoot on this now and just like, yes, there are people that might complain about this, but to what end? To just go to Swerve now and then what, he's going to drop it at All In because that was our original plan for Moxley to hold it until. It's like, I do feel like you've gone this far with it, and to be honest, like if this number does well, that's going to reinforce their belief that the Death Riders will be credited, or at least Moxley will be credited with that. But anyway, he says Swerve versus Ospreay or running back Swerve and Hangman would have been worthy of a main event for All In, whereas Moxley main eventing the show feels completely uninteresting. Yes, Swerve and Hangman teaming against the Bucks is unique, but it's not worth this. The match itself was decent, but Tony Khan simply refusing to budge on this Death Riders angle is mind-boggling to me. It's one thing to have a plan, but knowing when to make adjustments is just as important.
Yeah. Yes and no. I feel like it's also important for the creators to like see their original vision if they if they truly believe that they have a satisfying conclusion to it. And I feel pretty confident that I don't think we're going to, in Tony's mind, see an end to the Death Rider story until All In, until we get to the biggest stage. If he's investing an entire year into the story, he probably wants to end it at the biggest show of the year. So I feel like we can expect that. Whether we can assess maybe by July whether or not it was worth waiting all that time to get to that. Let's go to Chris from Vancouver, who says, I want to focus on the positive here. Excuse me, let me just bring that up. I want to focus on the positive. This was overall a great show. The three-way was my match to beat for the year. Both women's matches were great, and Knight made himself an overnight star. All in all, I am happy with the money and time being spent on AEW. That being said, I'm choosing to be happy because for the third pay-per-view in a row, I've ended the night feeling let down and disappointed in the finish of the main event. At this point, I feel like we're just waiting for Darby to return, which makes every main event storyline feel like it's treading water.
I mean, Darby's not coming back anytime soon, so I don't feel he is going to be the climax of this.
Because whoever comes back has to be in the tournament, in the Owen tournament. Whoever is going to be main eventing, all in. We'll have to, yeah. Right.
Jordan from the Bronx writes, a mixed bag show that will be more remembered by the Death Riders continuing on despite the hate that it gets. Adding the Bucks is an interesting choice, but is it interesting enough for people to want to continue following the angle? It's more clear now that the title will most likely change hands at All In, so that's 3 more months of this angle, and hardly anyone likes continuing. That's a rough ask. Loved Ospreay and Knight and the triple threat. Megan Bayne feels like a major player in record time. FTR's turn was very well done. The rest of the show felt okay to good, but the main event, in theory, could cause someone to check out of the angle until the Mox run is finished. Man, a lot more people are more subdued on this show that I would state if you like main event included. Like I thought this was like a really, really strong show overall. Like even if you're going to be negative towards the main event, that was still a hell of a show. Like if you're just cutting things off after the 3-way match.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to just forget about like a.
No, the main event's going to carry the most weight with people. That is going to be your final. That is going to be your final. You know, that's your takeaway.
Let's go to Sal from California, who says, it's not like these. I'm thankful to be in the Pacific time zone. The show ended at 9:30 my time, and I was feeling pretty tired. I don't know how you all survive on the East Coast. I have a lot of thoughts, but I know it's late for you too, so I'll just say this. My favorite moment of the night was Cash Wheeler stealing the neck brace from the medic and sarcastically laying down on the stretcher after FTR destroyed Cope. I'm still chuckling to myself just thinking about this. I can't wait for the eventual Cope and Christian versus FTR match. Hope you guys have a good night and can sleep a little after a long night.
Maybe there's just going to be a procession of like therapy sessions in AEW. We'll get Swerve and Hangman. We'll get Cope and Christian together.
Yeah. Do we know any? I think we know a therapist who might be in the company.
Yeah, I have a perfect candidate.
Yeah.
And Bryan from New Jersey, who just got home from seeing this show in Philadelphia, and he wrote this 6 minutes ago, folks. So he said, I had a great experience live. Would have been better had Swerve won the title, but clearly they have other plans. Great crowd. I give Ospreay versus Knight the edge over the 3-way for match of the night. Weakest to me was Jericho and Bandido with the corny false finish. So there you go, from someone that
kind of the impression I got, actually. Again, like seeing the reaction to the announcement that the match would be restarting, it wasn't as big of a pop as I was expecting. So.
You didn't get the I think what they were banking on was like Jericho pinning him and the crowd would just be stunned. Like they all thought Bandido would win and we're not doing that. And I just don't think the attachment is there to Bandido that would necessitate such, like if they did that false finish with Ray or someone, Ray's a bad example because I don't think the guy cares if people see him without his mask, but you understand, like a character like that, you would get that crazy reaction
Penta.
To a false finish. Sure. Penta.
Yeah.
So I think they were banking on that, which wasn't the case. I thought, you know, it was clever Swerve to do things and end it the way they did, but yeah, it wasn't going to be for, you know, it wasn't the most monumentally sustaining finish. All right. Based on my wording, I think it's time for us to call it a night because I'm tired. As is Way. Unless you're going to stay up, Way. Catch a replay of that main event. That is it. We're going to be back on Monday night right after Raw. So, hey, hit subscribe and like the video here. We are here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights immediately after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. You can jump on board. $6 a month gives you 30 days of access to the Post Wrestling Cafe at postwrestlingcafe.com. This month, our WrestleMania week coverage, it will be beginning next week. We're going to be going live daily in the lead up, in the days leading into WrestleMania. And then we'll be here on the YouTube channel Saturday and Sunday night right after WrestleMania 41, nights 1 and 2. We will see what length they keep those shows to on both nights. We shall see. And of course, you can check out all of our other shows. This weekend, we had a review of Sakura Genesis from Bruce Lord and Karen Peterson, Collision Course from last night with Kate from Montreal and John Ceno, and plenty coming up this week, including Tuesday's Ask Away mailbag show. You can get in your last minute questions at forum.postwrestling.com or send us a voicemail at memo.fm/postwrestling. Although we've got quite a lot of questions, so
yeah,
send them in. We might have to put some off till next month, but we have quite a lot to get to on Tuesday. So that is it for us, and we are going to sign off. Goodbye.